coming, everyone. I'd like to introduce, starting from my right, Clara Neppel. She's Senior Director at the European Business Operations Technology Center.
Hello.
We have Zacharoula Andreopoulou. I apologize if I'm butchering these names. Associate Professor of Environmental Informatics and Technologies for Green Regional Policies at Aristotle University of Thessaloniki.
Hello from me.
We have Melpo, Pittara. She is scientist specialist at the University of Cyprus.
Hello.
We have Professor Soulla Louca. She's Director of Partnerships at the Institute for the Future and University of Nicosia.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here with us.
And then finally, we have Christina Lomazzo, Blockchain Lead at UNICEF.
Hello.
All right, so starting with Christina, I'd like to give you 2 to 3 minutes to talk a little bit about yourself, what you're working on, and how you got into the space.
Perfect, thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Christina. I work at UNICEF Innovation, and we're a team that looks to prepare UNICEF for technologies of the future. We don't just have a blockchain team, we have a data science team, a drones team, and since late 2018, we've had a blockchain team. We have a venture fund which makes early stage investments into startups in emerging or developing economies. They're $100,000 tickets, and they receive a year of mentorship both from our team and from leading experts in the field. So we have 6 investments into blockchain companies to date, startups working on vaccine supply chain tracking, education credentials, or how to sell your mobility data in low connectivity areas like a refugee camp. Apart from that, UNICEF has offices in over 190 different countries, and so our team supports any country offices who are looking to do blockchain explorations but may not have a technical team to actually build out those solutions. I'll talk about some of those projects later on, but they have to do, for example, with payment processing or credentials, or looking at how do you get connectivity to remote areas using blockchain.
Great. Soulla, over to you.
Sure. Well, I have been in academia almost all my life, and teaching basically and doing research. My research interests usually ranged from networks for parallel machines to distributed systems and fault tolerance algorithms. The past 5 years, I have been dealing actually with blockchain technologies. So my research interest again shifted into blockchains, and this is what I've been dealing. You have heard quite a bit about the Institute for the Future and what we have been doing over these last years. We were responsible for, actually I was, along with Professor Younglis, I was responsible for designing and developing the master's degree in digital currencies. Also, at the same time, we started working on our free course that is being offered online, and more than 40,000 people have taken it over the years. We have designed also and issued the blockchain certificates on the blockchain, and of course organizing Decentralized and several other events, and at the same time doing research. Part of my research deals with socioeconomic aspects and blockchain technologies, dealing with how actually blockchain technologies can assist in society. Thank you.
Great. Zacharoula, over to you.
I'm at Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. I'm a professor of green information communication technology, green infrastructure, green policies, for regional development, for sustainability, and for the protection of the environment and the excellent use of natural resources. What we do in our department, in our laboratory, is to try to make the better use of technology, to use the digital innovation in a way that we make the most out of it, having in mind, having in focus not only the environment, and mitigate the climate change, but also the economic aspect and the social aspect, the society and the citizen. So smart innovation is in our focus, And in the last 3 years, we do a lot of research in Internet of Things and the way we can to use it in all our application and methodological approaches. I'm also a member of the Gender and Equality Committee of my university, and we try to do a lot of work to support this gender equality. And we'll discuss.
Thank you for having me here. It's really a great pleasure to be in an all-woman panel. Normally it's the other way around. My name is Clara Neppel. I'm the Senior Director of IEEE. That's how it's pronounced. It's the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. It's the world's largest technical organization in the world. We have more than 430,000 members worldwide, 60,000 in Europe, and I'm responsible for the European and African activities. Well, the technical fields that we cover range from electrical engineering, as we started 130 years ago, but now, of course, we go in other fields like medical technology, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and quantum. And what I'm really passionate about, and that's why I joined basically IEEE 2 years ago from the European Patent Office, it's really not only developing the technology, but also take into account the impact that we technologists have on society by developing those technologies. And as part, a representative of IEEE, we are also in constant discussion with policymakers, with other organizations like UNICEF, for instance, but also UNESCO, European Commission, United Nations, on these impacts of technology and how to design technology ethically and something that is actually benefiting society.
And Melpo, over to you.
Okay. I'm a researcher in the Department of Computer Science at the University of Cyprus. My expertise lies on electronic health, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and machine learning. Also, I'm a PhD student at University of Groningen in Holland, where I'm working on creating a framework for an intelligent virtual reality system for pain management for cancer patients. At the same time, I participate in Women Fit for Business, a program that supports and empowers young women through workshops and mentoring for innovative projects. In other words, they assist us with our idea development. Many believe that men are the only ones that are working towards changing our world. Fake news, guys. Girls and women also have the desire to change the world. My vision to give young women the opportunity to change the world through an NGO will help them and support them in the first steps in their careers and the first step in education in the university. Nice idea, but where are we starting? Well, in the very beginning of the summer, I was starting to look for organizations and societies in Cyprus that support engineers in general. I met people from IEEE, Cyprus Computer Societies, IET. When I asked them, what do you offer to women engineers, or do you have any sub-organization dedicated to promoting them, the response was no. During this process, I had the luck to meet Professor Soulla from University of Nicosia. The people from the above societies and organizations guided me to contact with her. I didn't have something to lose, so I sent her an email, explaining her my vision and what I want to achieve. She was so excited with my idea, so we arranged a meeting. During this meeting, she mentioned also the Decentralized conference and asked me if I want to participate in a panel to obtain feedback from women that are working in technology, and I seen in this way with my project in Women Fit for Business and my whole idea. So here I am today with 5 brilliant women.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask a couple of directed questions to each of our panelists. So starting with Zacharoula, could you elaborate on how you're using IoT and supply chain with blockchain?
We try to make the better use out of it. In our laboratory, because we deal with the natural resources, the exploitation of natural resources, we have a big project about the traceability of wood logs, the supply chain management of the wood production. It's a very big issue around the world, globally, the illegal logging, and it is very important to have sustainable wood now in the market. So we try to incorporate blockchain technology with the aspect of Internet of Things and elaborate some new platform, some new model, methodology.
Great. And then Clara. Sorry, just lost my place. Based on your experience with IP and public policy and communication, what are your thoughts on how blockchain could be used to benefit society?
Well, I think we heard a lot of examples in the last session as well. Now, from my background from IP, I can tell that there are already some projects, and I know how difficult it is to apply for patent. It costs. It is a quite of an exclusive business because you need a patent attorney and so on. So having IP or using blockchain so that to have IP on a blockchain, at least for registration, of course, sometimes you need to have an examination after that. I think it's really something that could benefit society because it would reduce the costs for applying for patent protection or for trademark protection. I think so. In addition to what I heard until now, I'm also very much interested in tracing back not only food and so on, but also talking about fake news. I think that could be really something, an interesting use case to use blockchain, to trace back the origin of news sources and also of data. We are discussing now more and more in the context of artificial intelligence on data quality and data ethics, where is the origin of the data. That's one of the aspects. So I think that that's also something that blockchain can be used for. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Soulla, over to you. Next question. How do you think blockchain can assist in issues such as human trafficking?
According to the World Bank, about 1.5 billion people are without any official documentation, any IDs to show who they are. So these types of people are usually very vulnerable to being exploited by traffickers. So what if we had blockchain-based systems through biometrics of the individuals so that they could be easily traced, especially when they're being transported over the borders? Another way that we could be using blockchain is basically to fight modern slavery. What do I mean by this? For example, if we take the case of diamonds, we know that in many cases we have what we refer to as blood diamonds. What if we were able to trace the journey of a diamond or any other similar product, actually, from the point of origin to the end customer? Of course, one can say that this may not always work because it depends also on the people that are uploading the data, the different types of info on the blockchain, because if those people are corrupted, then what happens? So there are still challenges that we're faced in that area too, but these are the things that we can be doing for now. Another way is the fact that a lot of the transactions in terms of payments are made via cryptocurrencies. And we're working on being able to identify the trails, how these transactions, basically the source of these transactions. So,
great.
some of the ways that we're working now.
Thank you. Christina, how is your organization using blockchain to protect and support the world's most vulnerable societies?
So there's three primary ways that we're looking at blockchain right now and supporting various populations. The first is through funding, the second is through knowledge sharing, and the third is around individual projects, and I'll give examples for all three. So the first around funding, I mentioned our fiat-denominated fund earlier. We announced 2.5 weeks ago now a crypto-denominated fund. So UNICEF as an organization can now accept, hold, and disperse cryptocurrencies. That means for a donor that you can see your funds coming into UNICEF and you can see when they're used. We follow the same model in our fiat fund where we make investments into early stage startups, and the startups who receive the crypto, either Bitcoin or Ether, then spend it in Bitcoin or Ether. So you're actually able to see the entire donation process. And again, these investments are made into UNICEF program countries. So we have investments in Mexico, Argentina, Tunisia, India, Bangladesh. These are areas that typically don't get the funding from VCs in New York or San Francisco. Secondly, I mentioned knowledge sharing. So blockchain is obviously a very interesting space. It's a leading edge space with very limited talent. And so if we can enable different communities with blockchain skills, we're not only giving them opportunities to build solutions for their local challenges, but we're also giving them the opportunity for micro work through initiatives like Bounties Network, where you can actually go and do micro work and earn a little bit of crypto for doing that. And so UNICEF has launched a program called Surge, where we've gone to several countries in the past year. We've been to South Africa, Thailand, Mexico, and we're actually teaching communities about blockchain technology, giving them the fundamental skills, and hopefully they'll build projects which then are eligible for our venture fund or our crypto fund. And lastly, our internal team is looking at blockchain in a variety of ways, both for internal efficiencies and external efficiencies. And one example of this is for school connectivity. So we're looking at how both blockchain and crypto can be used to finance bringing internet connectivity to a school. And what this means tangibly is how can crypto be used as a mode of payment to an internet service provider to bring connectivity to a school. Once you have internet connectivity, how do you make sure that the provider continues to provide that connectivity and verify that? And so we actually have probes, so physical devices or Chrome extensions in schools right now in Kyrgyzstan and a couple other countries where we're tracking the daily internet speed of those schools. So we can set a smart contract that says if service is not delivered N days out of the month, then, and we figure out what to do at that point, or we set those conditions. And so that's a prototype that we're working on now, and that's part of a larger initiative called GIGA that UNICEF is working on.
Excellent. Great. So one of the things we wanted to do is give Melpo a chance to ask some questions. She's already provided background and intro, so I'm going to pass the floor over to Melpo.
Clara and Christina, both of you work for big organizations such as IEEE and UNICEF. How do you think emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, and others will impact society?
Okay, thanks. I think it's going to be a profound impact. So I always like to make the comparison between what we are experiencing right now with another technology that is the car technology. And I have a picture in front of me from 1906. I know it because it's the birth year of my grandmother. It is a picture from San Francisco where you have all these vehicles that move from all over the place. You have different vehicles, you have electric cars, cable cars, and pedestrians, and they move everywhere. What seems to be chaotic was chaotic, and it brought a lot of accidents. It became a metaphor of that period. Like the Great Gatsby has an accident as a final scene. So the thing is, what can we do with these new technologies in order to make society ready for it? And I think that we are here on a panel about discussing about gender issues. And I think it's what we need is to build up new social norms. Basically, for the automotive industry, we also had to agree on some principles. And I think that what we heard here very often, also blockchain and AI, it's about improving efficiency. It's the first thing that everybody thinks, we need to improve efficiency. That was also for the car. We needed to improve the speed. Now, that's fine, but what do we do with the other issues? And I think that that needs a bit of self-reflection, also from our organization, by the way. So we are technologists, I'm a computer scientist. So we also need to take this responsibility and think of what kind of norms do we need to build up. And we need to think of the equivalent of educating the children not to go on the street, to the equivalent of having safety belts and so on, and also to agree on which side of the street we should go. And we should all be part of that discussion. I don't think that having a discussion only among technologies is a healthy discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm definitely in agreement that the technology will definitely have a profound impact. What I think we need to reflect on is not making some of the same mistakes that we've made with traditional systems. And someone mentioned this earlier today, that when the Bitcoin paper was released 11 years ago today, that was originally premised on people not trusting governments or banks, and that has since propagated to big tech. And what we're seeing in the blockchain space so far is not just a problem of diversity of gender, but diversity of everything. And so we need to make sure that we're being inclusive as we build this technology, and we include different types of populations. Most of the applications we see to date are built for iPhone applications or where you have full connectivity. That's not the reality for millions of people around the world. And so how do you realistically bank the unbanked if they still don't have KYC? Or how do you build an application for someone who's not literate? Those are considerations that not just technologists need to consider, but designers and strategists from the ground up, and is still being overlooked. So for me, it will have a profound impact, but I also want us to be wary to not make the same mistakes we've made in the past.
Professor Louca, do you think that the fact that these technologies are male-dominated will affect this impact?
Well, yes, I do believe so. We already know that there is a large skills gap when it comes to blockchain technologies. So if we are restricting ourselves to training and educating only part of the population and excluding women out, it means that we're at the same time excluding a large part of the workforce. So how are we going to implement the systems that we actually need to impact society? And this will not only affect the impact, but also the time of the materialization of the benefits of the blockchain technologies.
Thank you. Clara, what is your opinion about that?
Well, I would agree that it's not only about male and female, it's about generally inclusivity. I can give you an example. So being a technical organization, we are also male-dominated, but we have an initiative which is called Ethically Aligned Design. It's basically on autonomous intelligent systems. You can say a lot of it is on AI, but I think it's also blockchain includes that. In that initiative, we have 40% women. So I think at that point, when you start a discussion about a wider, a broader perspective, you will automatically have the interest of everybody, including women. And I think that it's important for, I think, in blockchain to make that access easier. I think for artificial intelligence even, it's a little bit easier to understand that there is a system with learning. I think with blockchain it's even more difficult to get that access point where you have certain parts of the population who actually participate in the discussion. So I think that's important for this community to make that access points open and include the other parts of the population.
I see. I see that you are all very passionate in these emerging technologies. Professor Andreopoulou, what triggered your passion about these technologies?
Thank you. I think it was my family that encouraged me to to be in that part of that technology system since I was a small girl. And they make me believe that I'm equal, I can do as best as anyone. And I think I pass it to my family. I try to continue that, and I try to make both my children believe, which is a boy and a girl, that they're both equal, like they can do their best in technology. And they both study in technology areas now. They both try to become engineers. What I try to say is that I believe it's the culture around us that sometimes limit us. And we have to have the courage to fight that. I mean, I said as a joke earlier during coffee time that if I'm in a play yard with my kids and they ask me, I work in the university, okay. They usually ask me, are you a secretary? Are you in some professor? You work for some professor? This is a question people have asked me very frequently. And all the time I ask myself, maybe I'm too moderate, maybe I should state that I'm a professor instead of saying I work in the university. Maybe a male colleague would state that from the beginning. And sometimes they ask me, do you teach in the university or do you teach in, let's say, high school? I mean, the culture around us is a little bit difficult. We have to ask ourselves, how many women are there present in this room now? What is the percentage of women registered in this conference? We can have the answer. And the thing that we are here gathering a panel as it is something very different. For me, this is the answer. Our culture has accepted that it's different for a woman to be in engineering, technology, and we have to fight for that.
Alexandra, what other challenges have you personally faced as a woman in blockchain? How have those challenges influenced your career path?
Right. So I've traditionally always been in male-dominated industries, and I've not really found much issue with it. So I'm kind of the opposite of, I think, what most women face. That's, yeah, as far as limiting my career, I haven't noticed any effect.
Dr. Andreopoulou, do you have some experience except...
I have already shared some experience with you. A lot of small stories, a lot of jokes. Once when in my career I had to face that challenge from the first, especially when we were younger, because I deal with forestry and natural resources, agriculture in general. We have to be sometimes in the open fields, in the yard with people working with the land. Sometimes they get skeptical and say, can you do that? Can you run this machine are you sure you can do that? Maybe. I think time and experience give us that quality to make people respect us and understand that we can do it in the same way.
Do you believe that bias against women in the tech industry is as dominant as in other industries?
I think that was an issue in the past decades. Now I believe that I would, if I had this type of position to recruit new personnel, I would take anyone who had the best qualification. I think now it has changed, and probably in industry they seek for the better person. So I think we're in a good road here.
I see. Christina, do you agree with the more women will make the blockchain stronger?
Yes, I think diversity generally will make blockchain much stronger. Well, I'm really glad to hear that a lot of my panelists haven't had challenges in the blockchain space. I certainly have. And so even when we look at the Bitcoin core code, there was a statistic released within the last year that only 5% of that code came from women. That's a very, very small percentile, and also points to an issue in the industry in terms of inclusiveness. I personally and a lot of my colleagues have been in really awkward situations around non-inclusive environments. And so there's small things that we can do to increase inclusivity, to make blockchain more powerful by having that diversity. A small example is that there's some conferences that offer childcare. And I love going to those conferences because I get to see a lot of attendees who traditionally can't attend, men or women, because they have children at home. Another step is funding in areas where we traditionally don't fund. So looking outside of the Europe, North America, Australia districts and funding projects in those areas.
Thank you. Professor Louca, you are one of the top 100 women in fintech for 2019. Also, you were one of the first women entering blockchain field. I'm wondering who were the tech heroes you had as a child?
Well, growing up, one of my favorite TV series was Star Trek. So I was just fascinated by the people living in the spaceship, the technology within the spaceship, from Geordi's visors to the communicators, to speed warps and the transporter. But if we look back into that technology, what was science fiction then, it's actually reality today. Okay, we may not have speed warps and transporters yet, but I think this was a major factor that influenced me, and I got to actually love technologies and what they could do for people. Provided, of course, we use them the correct way. I have to say that.
And the last question for today, any recommendation for younger women in tech?
Well, I think it's always about looking also what you would like to do, as always. And I think that it's a question also of governance on making it clear to women what the chances are if they are embracing technology, because the chances are really extraordinary. It's not only about technology, it's about the whole discussion. And I think, we're moving more and more towards socio-technical systems. So I think actually there's a lack of women. You probably all experienced that we are booked out for panel discussions because they are looking for women. So at the moment, I think that their chances are even higher than the drawbacks. So making that clear to women would be also something that could come from management, from the universities and so on, because it's one thing to see the programmer, the nerds, so to say, and say, I don't want to be like them. And it's another thing to say, well, actually, I can then participate in something like this.
I have a few words of advice for a young woman in entering the blockchain space. One would be find a mentor, very similar to what Clara mentioned. Either there's wonderful women up here, or there's mentorship programs like She 256, which actually looks to mentor individuals. The second is don't think that you have to go through a formal education to start in the blockchain space. There are great either free or credible resources out there. For example, the MOOC course I took a couple years ago when I was starting out, and lots of other self-learning resources. And lastly, just that you can do it. Believe in yourself. This is a space for everybody.
Sorry, I'll go. Well, one thing that I want to say actually to young women is that they need to believe in themselves. You are all beautiful, intelligent, smart. Do not let anybody intimidate you. And if you really believe in yourselves, then not even the skies are the limits. You can do it.
I would echo as well, Christina, with finding a mentor. That's one of the really key things you can do at the very beginning of your career. Finding somebody who's gone through the process, whatever process it is, will be able to provide some decent guidance. Also, don't accept limits, self-imposed or those imposed on you. Oftentimes you'll hear, well, maybe you don't need to be president, maybe vice president, maybe that's good enough. Don't accept the limit. If you've got the goal and desire to do something, follow your dreams.
I would give the same advice, that you have to be persistent, we have to be multitasking. If we want, we can fulfill anything. We can demonstrate our best qualifications. And I would say to young women who think about their career that if they really want, they can also have the equilibrium about a family and their career in technology. Sometimes this is a problem. People think that it can be a problem to have a family and also be an intelligent woman or working with technologies, being blockchain, be in a future technology or whatever. We have to believe in ourselves and be persistent, very persistent in our dream, and then we will make it.
Thank you. I think we have time with 1-2 questions from the audience. No questions? Okay.
Can I ask a question? Oh, there is a question.
It's more than a question, it's a reflection. I'm very much in favor of inclusiveness. It's one of, but as a half European, half Asian, there's something that I found a bit lacking in Europe. We are very much talking a lot and doing a lot about gender equality, but we don't think in a vertical way. For example, what about children equality in comparison with adults, children, or boys and girls? For example, when I fly in India or in Malaysia in an airline, they say, "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls." I just wonder why. I've never heard those. I've heard that in Malaysia, in India, and some other Asian countries. Aegean, great. That's a great thing. But there's something to reflect upon, because sometimes you feel that those people, they have a lot to say. We've seen this with the environment, for example. It's something that concerns them much, that it concerns us as adults. And yes, that type of inclusiveness is also very important. And I think women, of course, who are usually more concerned about ethical issues than men, at least to date, well, I think that's worthy of consideration. Thank you very much for your discussion.
Can I say something? Actually, if I may, I just have a quick question for the men in our audience. Because when we were discussing with Melpo about this panel, I asked quite a few men if they would like to join it. And the answer, I got quite a few answers like, what? They were going to make fun of me. Why do you think this is the case? Well, something to reflect back then. Thank you.
Maybe I just wanted to comment on what you said about the children. I think that you're absolutely right. Actually, 1/3 of the internet users are children under 18. And what is also clear that the technology is not designed for them. So one of the things that we are doing in IEEE is on several initiatives on age-appropriate design, also with UNICEF. That's also a very good example of lack of inclusivity. I agree. But there are already initiatives around it.
I had to think about your question, so that's the reason why I'm a slow reaction. I would like to give you an answer, and then I have again a question to the panel. I think it's quite easy. Usually men feel comfortable if they are among them, and every man is afraid of people like you, I believe so. So that's one of the reasons that they behave unfair, and they behave also unfair in the organization. So I love very much your reaction that you said before. Young ladies should be more self-confident and should, I think they have to do more because the system is not definitely friendly to them. But the other way around, so I have now 30 years experience in my professional life, the last 20 years in management positions, and to give you a feedback, I experienced very much that every time when I tried, personal experience, to empower young ladies, I was not always that successful. The initial reaction was, no, I'm not sure that I'm able to do so. I have to ask somebody else. Give me some more years that I can develop myself. If I would have, or if I've done the same question to one of my man employees, yes, of course, I'm waiting for it. Even he was not capable of it. So I experience a strong misconception on the personal self-evidence. So I would give you the answer. What advice do you give me as a responsible manager in an organization? What can I do to support, to empower? Inviting, I think, is a little bit too less for the moment.
Okay. Well, I believe it has to do with the self-confidence of the women because they are trained to believe that they cannot do it because of the environment around them. So if we try to remove, let's say, these different boundaries that exist around them in relation to their self-confidence, then I think it can be achieved. So this is my answer. Anybody else would like to?
I would like to recommend to you to try to treat everyone equally in the same way. Maybe, I don't know, subconsciously, maybe you talk to them more polite or more restricted, I don't know. Maybe we have to treat to everyone in an office, in a working environment in the same way and make clear that it's the same way to all of them. And then they have to react in the same way. That's my opinion. I would do that. That's what I do in my lab.
And I think it's also, it has to be a continuous process. I think if you ask a woman from one day to another to take on a position, it's going to, not be so self-evident as for a male. If you, however, include her in discussions and so on, and she has a decision or a voice to say in time, then she's growing naturally into that role. I think it's more important for women than for men who are, maybe just waiting for this for a long time, and it would be just a self-assurance that for something that they thought forever that they are so great. I think that for women you need to, they have to grow into that position as well, especially if you have an environment which was not very friendly to them.
I have one more thing to add. I'd say be observant and ask more questions. So specifically, if you see that somebody has potential, ask, why did you do it that way? That's interesting. Not in an accusatory way, but just in an inquiring sort of way. Sometimes that's a softer approach, and that allows the individual to grow into their leadership better.
And assure them that it's okay if they make a mistake. They can fix it the next time. So.
Let me also thank you, a wonderful panel. Let me address the last question that the colleague had. cultural change is not as easy. Stereotypes, sexism, all these issues that we have been facing all along are not easily targeted, and you need to basically work on it. Training after training after training. But if you grow up in an environment, not only family, but schooling, books, TV, mass media, social media, if there is an inferred discriminatory action against one part of society, a minority group or whatever, that is integrated into your adulthood. So we need time. And certainly the role models we have are not that many. So if we have the role models in our society, then it's easier for younger individuals to adopt those roles. Otherwise, yes, it takes a while. But we are very hopeful. Thank you, ladies.